Okay. So if I did this right, and I hit this button, we can start. Virus found. Would you like to keep the virus, yes or yes? Yes. 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 Ah! Oh. Okay. Okay, I'm fine. You guys all right? Let's see what happens. There are a lot of messages that people give that encourage you to do your best, try your hardest, and if you just don't give up, you will succeed. This is not one of those. Today's message is to either convince you or remind you that you are a failure. You're a failure. Subtitle, When Your Best Just Isn't Good Enough. And I think it's kind of interesting that I'm talking about this today because tonight, those of us who are playing handball, almost all of us will be dealing with this. So this is good preparation for most of us. And for those of you who win tonight, be nice. I'm talking to you too. Western culture really enjoys failure, other people's failure. America's Funniest Home Videos. If you go on YouTube and watch almost anything entertaining, it's because someone else is screwing up. If you Google fail or epic fail, you are barraged with photos and stories, and it just goes on. I would warn you, though, I tried that in some research for this, and some of the failures are not DA appropriate, so don't go home and Google fail unless your safe search is on. There's a word that the English language uses, but we borrowed it from the Germans, that describes this love of other people's failure, and it's called Schadenfreude. Yes? All right. The definition is a malicious satisfaction obtained from the misfortunes of others. So some of you were enjoying my little turmoil back here with my iPad catching on fire. That was Schadenfreude, and shame on you. It's a big deal. Failure is a big deal. Here's a book from the library. It's called Complete and Utter Failure, and it's a story of other people's screw-ups. If you're familiar with the Darwin Awards, it's books about people who have contributed to human evolution by self-selecting themselves out of the gene pool due to their own unnecessarily foolish actions. They are too stupid to have kids, and we're thankful for that. I personally don't care for those books because I don't like to find entertainment in people actually dying out of stupidity, but they have been very popular, especially in America. How many of you have ever been in a spelling bee? Okay. I couldn't get the most recent statistics, but the last thing that I saw, and it was from about 15 years ago, said that 9 million students in America participate in the National Spelling Bee from the classroom level all the way up. Out of those 9 million students, how many of them fail? 8,999,999. I still remember the word that I missed in 4th grade in the spelling bee. I now know that oxygen does not have an I in it. Failure can define who you are. If you ask anybody my age or older who Bill Buckner is, they will all be able to tell you the one play that he botched in the 1986 World Series, the Red Sox against the Mets. That is his one infamous moment. Here's another example of failure. That was a home run. If you type in Jose Canseco's name in Google, this is one of the first things you'll find, even though he's the first player to steal 40 bases and hit 40 home runs in the same year. He's a great player, yet this now has followed him ever since. So, I think I've established that a lot of people are failures, and let's talk about me. Ever since I was about your age, I had a goal in life. I've had a life motto. High school, college. I probably established it in college. And forgive the language, but my goal in life is to not suck. It's always been my goal, to not suck. I don't have to be the best at everything that I do, but I hate it when I'm bad at anything. I hate it. It just drives me nuts. And so that's been my goal. I just strive to at least be okay at everything. And yet, one time, when I was in elementary school, it had rained, and just beyond the playground was a big grass field, and the field was filled with puddles, and there was this one puddle that I thought would be really cool if I ran and soared over it. And so I ran, but when I got closer to it, I realized that the puddle was much, much wider than I initially anticipated, and so I tried to stop. But trying to stop on wet grass doesn't work, so my feet slipped out from under me, and I splashed down right in the middle of 4 inches of frigidly cold autumn rainwater, and I soaked myself through. And in my elementary school, if you soak your clothes and you go to the office for new ones, they give you plaid corduroy pants. And they weren't in style at all. It was terrible. And so I didn't. I went back to class, and I sat soaked, and everyone for the entire day made fun of me for having wet my pants. I didn't really have time to explain to them, no, I fell. So they all thought that it was worse. One time, in middle school, it was my first day in youth group at my church, and it was middle school, high school youth group. For elementary, I always looked up to these kids, but this was my very first time. And we played a game that day, and the game was a relay race where we all lined up, and your job was to eat a banana and then chug a can of root beer as fast as possible, and then the next person would go, and whoever got to the end won. I was the first person in my group. I slammed the banana, I chugged the root beer nonstop, and then I hurled everywhere. All over everyone and everything. It was a disaster. Have you seen Daddy Daycare? Yeah. So needless to say, we lost. Needless to say, everyone lost. One time in college, I got accepted to Wheaton College, which is actually a pretty decent school. It's kind of hard to get into. You got to be okay. And I was okay, and I was especially okay in math. I mean, I don't mean to brag, but I'm really good at math. I am so good at math that when my wife found out that in high school I was on the math team, she almost left me. And as hard as I try to convince her that it was because we got out of school once a month and we only had to answer 2 questions and we got free pizza, I can't convince her that my being good at math is an okay thing. But anyway, I was good at math. In high school, I did well. And I went to college, and the first week I was there, I went and I took a placement test, like a kind of a CLEP type test to test out of math so I wouldn't have to take it in college. Failed it. Very first test I ever took in college. Nobody had told me what standard deviation was, and that was 6 out of the 10 questions, and that's like over half. So, see. One time, when I was student teaching, I was a senior in college, and I did my student teaching at ICA in Côte d'Ivoire. And it was my first week there, and I didn't know anybody, and I was new to Africa and pretty much new to traveling and everything. And they had a petit poteau court like we do. And I was out there playing petit poteau one day, and I was trying to make a good impression. Even though soccer wasn't my sport, I decided to give it a try. I did pretty well. And then after we played for a while, I was sitting on the wall next to the goal, and they didn't have a net on the back or anything like that. I was just sitting out there kind of hanging out, catching my breath and all that. And all of a sudden, a ball came flying at me out of nowhere and hit me straight in the face and blew me off the wall backwards, and I landed in the dirt. It was humiliating. One time, last April, I was up in the computer lab, and I needed to find Kent Corbin and he was walking from my class to something over in the A building, and he was walking across the blue top. And I was in a hurry. I didn't want to lose him. So I sprinted across the blue top to catch up with him kind of over there by Aunt Jill's office. Does anybody happen to remember what happened there? Okay. Shoot. You guys, some of you remember. Well, my foot hit sand on the blue top, and kind of like elementary, out go my feet, and I hit blue top, and then sidewalk, and then I ended up in the sand pit over there that's now turf. And it was right in front of Kent, and it was right in front of apparently Akini, and it was in front of, Seku saw it. You guys, a bunch of you actually saw me do that. And later on that night when I told my wife about it, she couldn't breathe. She was laughing so hard. And then I pulled my pockets inside out, and they were filled with sand because I had skidded through, and oh, it's awful. Yeah, I did. I think I still have scars. One time in high school, I had an experience that is so traumatic that the only way to share it with you is in a poem. I stood tall and proud, approaching the plate. I was last back. It was getting late. I tapped my shoes, turned and spat, did other baseball gestures like that. A swing and a miss. That's strike one. It was all right. I was still having fun. I stepped back up and tried again. I had to hit. We had to win. Eye on the ball, I took a great cut. Spun around twice, fell right on my... What? Drag. I missed. That's strike two. One more chance. What will I do? I gathered myself and stepped up once more, spat once or twice, heard the crowd roar. A swing and a miss. That's strike three. It moved. It shook. How could this be? Well, that changed my life and my baseball career. I'd had it. I quit. The end was here. It's hard to imagine. How hard can it be to hit the ball off that blasted tee? Okay, as a bit of an exaggeration. I did write that poem in high school, and I actually did get cut from the baseball team in high school, but I didn't strike out in t-ball. Well, I think it's pretty safe to say that I have failed to uphold my life's motto. And that's pretty clear. But I want to talk about failure a little bit. And I want to make a few distinctions about the failure I want to talk about. I am not talking about avoidable failure. I'm not talking about, being unprepared or being prideful or giving up too soon or just missing out on something out of fear or bad choices or anything like that. We should strive to avoid those types of failure. Embarrassing moments, that applies to some extent because embarrassing moments, as much as they happen, they can be really traumatic. And so, a little bit on that. But really what we're talking about is that type of failure where you try as hard as you can and you just don't succeed. And so in dealing with failure, I think we should ask ourselves a couple of questions. The first is, how do you view failure? How do you view failure? If failure is the worst thing that could ever possibly happen to you, if you are paralyzed by fear of failing, you're not probably viewing failure in a realistic way. Do you realize that even the best people fail a lot? The Tigers, who are in the World Series right now, failed last night, sorry. They failed 74 times this season, and yet they're the best team in the American League. The Giants, they failed 68 times this season, and yet they're in the World Series as well. Miguel Cabrera is the best hitter in the American League. He only hit a third of the times that he tried, and he struck out almost 100 times. He failed a lot, and he's the best guy. Failure, and understanding that failure is natural and it happens to all of us, has actually revolutionized how I've played sports. And I'm a little bit aggravated by the fact that I didn't figure this out until like just a couple of years ago. If I had known this when I was your age, I would have been a much better and more successful athlete. But as it was, I was worried that anytime I missed a shot or missed a goal or anything like that, everyone else would look at me and judge me and think badly about me. And I come to realize that everybody fails, and it has dramatically improved my confidence, so that if I miss a shot, oh well, I keep playing. I don't let that destroy the rest of the game. Hopefully, I try not to. Here's another guy that some of you will recognize. His name is Michael Jordan, one of the all-time best basketball players ever, and here's his take on failure.
I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life. And that is why I succeed.
Michael Jordan shot around 50% from the field, which means he missed as many shots as he took. So if you think about it that way, and you have to take that shot and miss it before you can take that shot and make it, you're not afraid of taking any of the shots. You take all of them. Second question, other than how do you view failure, how do you respond to failure? Because we're going to fail. How do you deal with it? And I want to preface this. When you do it immediately, like when you wipe out on the blue top, and everyone's laughing at you, I don't mean like do this stuff immediately. Sometimes you have to go find a corner and lick your wounds a little bit and recover. But eventually, you should be able to look at this failure in a different light than, oh, this is the end of the world. Rick Warren says that since failure is common to all of us, one of the most important life skills you can learn is how to respond to it. Successful people know how to turn every failure into a learning experience, a stepping stone to future success. So as you fail, think about these things. Accept responsibility for your own failure. Proverbs 28:13 says, anyone who refuses to admit his mistakes can never be successful. But if he confesses and forsakes them, he gets another chance. I have very little patience for people who like to make excuses for their own shortcomings, that always blame somebody else. Yeah, but it was so, and just making up excuses all the time. I have tremendous respect for any person who can accept when they made a mistake and say those words, I'm sorry. It's a big deal to me. I respect people who can do that. I've been pulled over for speeding 5 times in my life. Every single time that I've done it, I was in the wrong, I was breaking the rules, I was breaking the law, and every single time I've done it, I said to the officer, you're right, I broke the law. I never made excuses. 4 out of those 5 times, the officer said, we'll try harder next time and let me off without a ticket. One time he even said, your honesty is refreshing. The last time I got a ticket, $200-something, and I paid it because I deserved it, and there was no real getting around it. Recognize the benefits of failure. Failure shows you what doesn't work. Thomas Edison said, don't call it a failure, call it an education. Thomas Edison, the guy who failed 9,999 times before finding the right thing to glow inside of his light bulb. It forces you to be more creative. It forces you to look for new ways. If at first you don't succeed, try something different. It prevents arrogance and egotism. If everything you did was a stunning success, no one could live with you, right? You won't have any more friends if you're always succeeding. It causes you to reevaluate what's important in life. Failure is one way God lets us reflect on the direction of our lives. Failure is one way God gets us to reflect on the direction of our lives. If you allow failure to define you, if that one event becomes who you are, you will live your life in fear and in paralysis. You will be too scared to try anything new. And also, by the way, very few other people, I was actually encouraged that only a couple of you raised your hands, very few other people remember your failures. You are your own worst critic. So don't worry about it so much. But if you allow your failure to refine you, it can lead you to successes you never imagined. Your ideal outcome is not the only and not always the best. God can and often does bring successes through your failures. That one time that I struck out in T-ball, Actually, I'm describing that one time that I got cut from the baseball team. I was a freshman in high school. I had dreams, at that point still, I had dreams of aspiring to Major League Baseball. Yeah, I'm not quite big enough, but I didn't know that at the time. But that was my plan, high school baseball, that was it. And I got cut the first time I ever tried. It turns out, though, even though I have no idea how my life would have gone if I had made that team, because I didn't, it allowed for experiences and relationships that I never would have had. I got involved in journalism, photography, band and music, and drama. All of those things I never would have had a part in if I had been playing baseball the whole time. In fact, if I do this, we're going to be a little bit late, but my 5th grade class, way back in the day, I told them that I had a secret, that I would tell them the last day of school, and then I forgot. And then I told them I was going to do it when they graduate, but this is actually a pretty great spot to do it. So I was in drama, and when I was a freshman, I got cast in a musical. And the musical was called Snow White Goes West. And I was Jake Dwarf. And I was the best dancing dwarf. That's what my director told my baseball coach. Anyway. It didn't work well, but so this is for you, my 5th graders from back in the day. Okay, here we go. This was 18 years ago, so if I fail, oh well, okay. There's gold in California, and it's gonna be mine. Gold in California, and I'm feeling so fine. I'm gonna stake myself a claim on it, make my name and fame on it. There's gold in California, and it's gonna be mine. So, there you guys go. That's been a long time coming. And you can imagine why I didn't tell them in the middle of 5th grade is because now you're never going to look at me the same way again. So, all right. Remember that one time I fell off the Petit Poteau wall? I got blasted in the face by a soccer ball. Some of you know this already. Who kicked that ball? My wife. That was one of the very first experiences I ever had with her. She literally knocked me off of my feet. Here's one more example of how failure ended up being an incredible success. The story, maybe you've heard of it, it's of Derek Redmond. In 1992, he ran in the Barcelona Olympics, and he was slated to be the gold medal winner. And if he had done that, he would have gone down in the record books as being another gold medal winner. But instead, he had a bit of a failure. And as a result of that failure, he did not win, but he did become a part of one of what I think is the most moving, inspirational sports moments that I have ever seen.
When troubles come and my heart burdened be, then I am still and wait here in the silence until you come and sit a while with me. You raise me up You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. You raise me up to more than I can be. When I am on your shoulders, you raise me up to more than I can be.
So it wasn't Derek Redmond's goal, but it was a success in the fact that half of you are wiping your eyes right now, because that was a moving thing. When his father came up to help him, I think we can take something from that. When we witness failure, when we see other people fail, instead of the schadenfreude, maybe a little sympathy, maybe a little empathy instead, maybe coming alongside and helping them. Maybe like the crowd that cheers. 60,000 people saying ovation. Okay. 11 years ago, I took a trip to Timbuktu. When I was in Côte d'Ivoire, I took a trip up to Timbuktu. This was before there was a road there. This is also while you still could go there somewhat safely. I went with 3 friends. None of us spoke French. None of us really knew what we were doing, what we were getting ourselves into. We did public transport the whole way up. We didn't really, it was just kind of, it was an adventure. And it would have been terrible. In fact, it kind of was terrible. Some of the most uncomfortable experiences I've ever had in my life were on that trip up to Timbuktu. And yet, we ended up having a good time. And it was because we established another motto, and it's a little crass again, I'm sorry about that, but we had a phrase that we used the entire time that we were traveling. For any bad thing that happened, we would say to each other, embrace the suckiness. And anytime something bad happened and we thought that way, we just basically said, it's going to be bad, but you know what, it's going to be okay. It's going to lend itself to a great story. We all suck. And this is not to say that we should give up and not try, but for some of you, you need permission to cut yourself some slack. I need to be able to admit that I suck at some things sometimes. I fail. I should have t-shirts made. No. You can't totally avoid it, so embrace it. And more importantly than that, embrace the gift that Christ offers each of us. For where we have all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, where we have all failed, he still gave his life for us, a sacrifice and full payment of our debt, so that we might be forgiven and all our sins and all our failures will be covered. Embrace that. There's also one other failure I forgot to mention, or I haven't mentioned yet, and that is a pretty big one. Many, if not most, of Jesus' followers thought that when he was arrested and crucified, that all was lost. The man they had thought was to be their Messiah had failed. There was no hope. But then in 3 days, when he rose again, what was first thought to be a failure became the most important victory in all of humanity. Jesus conquered death. So the next time you fail, try not to lose heart. There may be an entirely different success awaiting you. Let's pray. Father, help us to deal with our shortcomings, to deal with our failures, and to trust you with the outcome. Thank you that you offer us a gift of forgiveness and the gift of your Son's life to cover our shortfalls. Be with those competing tonight in handball. Help them to play for your honor and glory. Keep them safe, and help us all to embrace one another in our failures and success.